All right. Welcome to Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast with myself, your freedom coach, Natasha Miller. All right. So Trauma Talk Radio is an unconventional podcast committed to helping people live a trauma free lifestyle, one candid conversation at a time. There are three components to Trauma Talk Radio. One is our interview shorts, where I'm just out and about interviewing everyday people about overcoming life traumas, and we post those clips. Two is our Dear Freedom Coach component, where you can send in your interview question, and I post clips of me answering those questions. And then lastly, our live Trauma Talk Radio broadcast here on YouTube every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And one of the unique things about our live broadcast is that viewers have the opportunity to call in and join me here on the platform for a candid conversation about overcoming life traumas. So let's get into our topic for this evening. We typically open up with some content for our live broadcast. And then after the content portion, I open up the lines where viewers can call in. So our topic this evening is transforming triggers, transforming your triggers. All month for February, we're talking about unpacking triggers. And last week we talked about how to identify your triggers. I gave you one tidbit on how to identify your triggers, which is to identify the depth of your core values, because typically your triggers are correlated with your core values. So we talked about that last week. So let's get into the topic for this week. How do we transform our triggers? What are we transforming our triggers into? And is it possible to transform your triggers to the point where you are no longer triggered? We're going to explore and answer all three of those questions tonight. All right. So let's just do a quick recap. Trauma is anything that violates your internal sense of safety, security, instability, anything that makes you feel internally unsafe, insecure, emotionally, mentally, spiritually unstable. And then triggers recall the residue of your trauma history, those traumatic experiences of the past. Also, triggers invites you to pursue inner healing, renew your mindset, declutter, prioritize, and rest. So triggers not only recall residue, but it gives you invitations to do something different and be ye transformed so that you can move forward and cultivate a trauma-free lifestyle. So you can transform your triggers with the following four steps. I'm just going to give you 4 steps to transform your triggers. So, step number one, identify. Identify the fear narrative associated with the trigger. So, last week we talked about identifying the triggers, so we know what our triggers are. We have the awareness of our triggers. And to transform those triggers, we have to identify the fear narrative associated with them. So, what is the fear narrative? How do we even know there is a fear narrative? Because there is. Fear is the number one trauma aftermath. And so, typically, our defense mechanisms, coping mechanisms, our trauma responses, those actions that we take when we experience a trigger is grounded in fear. Fear as the aftermath of trauma shows up in ways that we preserve ourselves and protect ourselves. And that's typically what we do with our defense mechanisms, coping mechanisms, trauma response. We're preserving ourselves and protecting ourselves based on our past traumatic experiences. So, what is the fear narrative associated with that behavior? And do I fear being alone? I fear being abandoned. I fear being misunderstood. I fear being silenced. What is the fear? I fear the unknown. I fear success. What is that fear narrative? So you want to identify the fear narrative associated with the trigger. Number two, investigate. Don't just stop at identification. Go deeper. Investigate that fear narrative. When did you embrace the fear narrative as your truth? When did you embrace it as your truth? Investigate to identify and locate the traumatic experience that opened the door to the fear narrative. So we want to get to the root, we want to get to the source of where this fear narrative came from, what stimulated the fear narrative. Number three, intel. So now that we know the narrative, now that we know the root, the source, where it came from, it's time to gather intel with introspective and innovative thinking. What is the replacement for the fear narrative, trigger, and trauma response, coping mechanism, defense mechanism, whatever it is, that's the actual action once you experience the trauma, the trigger. So, what is the replacement? And then number four, implement. So don't just stop um at gathering the intel you need to formulate the replacement. You want to actually implement the replacement. Now it's time to take action. So implement. Implement the replacements until the process of inner healing and deliverance from that traumatic experience is complete. And you know that it's complete when you are no longer triggered by any familiarity, anything that reminds you of how you felt, what you thought, the pain that was inflicted upon you per that traumatic experience. So this is answering the question, how do we transform our triggers with these four steps? And then the question, what are we transforming our triggers into? We're transforming them into what I call freedom strategies. That is the replacement. So I also call them not coping, conquering methods. So no longer are we using coping mechanisms. No longer are we in defense using defense mechanisms or trauma responses of any sort. We are using conquering methods. I mean, we've overcome this thing. I've conquered this particular area of my life within my soul realm, my mind, emotions, and will, my power to decide. And then the final question, is it possible to transform your triggers to the point where you are no longer triggered? Absolutely. Your commitment to implementing the replacements, the conquering methods, the freedom strategies, then positions you to where you've eliminated those triggers altogether. And so what I call it is the process. Transforming your triggers is the process of installation. It's the installation process. There you go. Transforming your triggers is the installation process of your freedom navigation system that replaces your trauma default system. My goodness. Come on now, somebody. So your trauma default system your triggers are eradicated because your trauma default system has been replaced by your freedom navigation system. But here's the catch, and this is going to prepare us for our next live broadcast. Even after you've been healed and delivered, set free from a particular traumatic experience, and you know that you have because you are no longer triggered by anything that is familiar to it, you may still experience some trigger turbulence here and there. It's key that you're on the other side. And what I call it is transference triggers. And we're going to talk about that at our next Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast when we go over the assessment, how to assess where you are in this process. Where are you with the triggers? Are you on the other side where you're only experiencing transference triggers, or are you still in the process of transforming your triggers with three other forms of triggers? And we're going to break all that down on the final Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast for this month, February 2025, where our theme is all about unpacking triggers. So that is it for the content. If there is anyone here for the live broadcast, please drop a comment in the chat. Let me know if you have any questions, any comments. Let me know if everything was clear, if anything was unclear. Also, I have the invitation link in the chat as well. So if you are here for the live broadcast and you would like to come on and join me for a candid conversation about either the content that I shared with you this evening or something that's on your heart pertaining to overcoming life traumas, you are more than welcome to join me through the StreamYard link on here for us to have a conversation. Because remember, Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast, Trauma Talk Radio all the way across the board is about conversation, dialogue. There is no Trauma Talk Radio if there's no engagement and feedback and responses and things of that nature from you all. It's about conversation. This is how we're cultivating a trauma-free lifestyle by having candid conversations with one another. So if there's no one here to engage at this time via the chat or to call in, um, I will get ready to close on out with our announcements. And I'll still give time if anyone is calling in, because it may take a minute to come through the link and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna start with the announcements, and then if nothing changes by the time I'm done with the announcements, we're gonna roll out until next time. All right, so our announcements this evening, please stay connected to me on all social media platforms at Freedom Coach N Miller on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Also, if you haven't already, please visit my website to download a free copy of my ebook, Freedom Revolution Handbook. Um, I forget, I think it's 7 strategies to overcome the battle within. I'm forgetting the title of my own ebook, but it's there on my website. Also, there's information for upcoming events that I'm having. I'm having our Transforming Grief Intensive in person is coming up in March, and so information for that is on there. Also, when you come back in March, information for the online intensive that will be in April will be on my website. So just visiting my website peri- periodically, monthly, at least once or twice a month, you'll see the updates for things that I have coming up. In the Transforming Grief Intensive, I'm facilitating that all year for free in person for those of you who are in the Bay Area, California, and virtually online for all of you who are viewing from everywhere else in the world. So stay connected to come to that and please share with others. Invite others to the Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast. Invite others to the Transforming Grief Intensive. Stay tuned for more information about my Freedom and Fun Academy membership. Online membership is opening soon. If you're on my email list, you'll get the information um, VIP style before I release it to the public. So that's another reason why you would want to download the ebook to get on my email list. And that's about it. So remember our final Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast for February is going to be Tuesday, February 25th. Next Tuesday, February 18th, is our Trauma Talk Today show. Woo! Here on YouTube and Facebook simultaneously at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. For our Trauma Talk Today show, that's when we have guest speakers come on and they share their story, their trauma to triumph story. And so the topic we have is life after loss, growing with God through the grieving process. So that's coming up next Tuesday and it's going to be really, really good. And I'm super duper excited about it. So make sure you set your notifications and join us for an empowering conversation and just really have an opportunity to glean from someone else's experiences and how they're living life free on the other side of a traumatic experience. And so that's going to be yummy. And that is it. I believe that's all of my updates and announcements. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. That's it. That's all. Okay, so I don't see any comments. No one has joined me back here behind the scenes in the studio to come on. So we're about to rock and roll because for us to be here for a long time, y'all got to come in. You got to come to the live and engage with the live broadcast. Okay. Otherwise, it's the content, it's the announcements, and then it's the deuces. See you next week. All right. So that's it for now. Thank you to those of you who caught the live broadcast and to those of you who took the time out to watch the replay. And I look forward to seeing you all next week for Trauma Talk Today show. It's going to be good. All right, this is your freedom coach, Natasha Miller, signing off. Until next time, peace and freedom.